Okay,
Okay, and so we are on the record.
very good. Let's start this special commission meeting by taking the roll call, please.
Okay, Commissioner Curran,
Here.
Commissioner Doherty,
Here.
Commissioner Floyd,
Here.
Commissioner Japong Porter.
Here.
There she is. Okay, Commissioner Miletus,
Here.
Commissioner Aval,
Here.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Here. Okay, I went from 85-degree weather yesterday to today, which is, we start with Steve Marks with an introduction. Director Marks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members, representatives, and public. We are here today to move forward our long-awaited marijuana rules. These have been, 18 months in the making. Many of them came out of the need of legislation that was passed in 2021, most notably House Bill 3000, which really dealt with a lot of the hemp issues, including giving us the opportunity to do field testing for marijuana products on registered hemp grows, increasing the law enforcement capabilities to investigate cannabis operations that are not part of a state program, and then Senate Bill 408, which really called on us to reform our system advanced by industry. We spent a lot of time working through that legislation with them and the industry to move forward on making clear our standards for license cancellation by violations, a huge improvement in that respect through this legislation and with the rules you will enact today. Also dealt with a lot of the limits that we placed on our industry, both for serving size, amounts that you could purchase, and these reflect, I think, an advancement that moves us in greater alignment with other states that have also legalized. These rules deal with a lot of issues. They try to balance a number of different concerns, consumer health and safety, the interest of small and large operators in our industry, and public safety concerns around loopholes in the Federal Farm Bill of 2018 and the illicit marijuana production going forward in Oregon. Some examples of the progress that these rules make include taking the licensee concerns very seriously in terms of the cost of compliance with metric reporting. We now allow, under these rules, you'll be allowed to do batch harvest weights instead of individual plant weights, and you won't have to tag plants until they're 36 inches tall. So an advantage for the cost and efficiencies of the marketplace. We're broadening the transfer limits to allow for greater self-determination by licensees, and I think to match the economics and efficiencies of the market. So we allow producers to transfer to a processor who can receive their product back to move it in the market, to move their usable marijuana in the market. This is an efficiency that really went against the original theory where everything moved up in stages. That allows greater flexibility, I think, for commerce to occur and for businesses to self-determine how they best want to operate in our business environment. We also allow expanded home deliveries. So this will allow, adjoining jurisdictions to be delivered to if those jurisdictions allow home delivery. And that was something the industry was very interested in being provided through legislation and by these rules. We're expanding consumer access so you can purchase now up to 2 ounces of usable marijuana, and expanding the concentration limits for edibles up to 100 milligrams. And then we're reclassifying numerous violations and making them lesser offenses than cancelable offenses. And this project will go on. I'll just note right here that Chairman Paul Rosenbaum has asked that we report with the industry working group to the commission on the conclusion of this reformation process we have in place for violations. So hopefully in March, we will have a report that details for you sort of our expectations of what it'll take to end this round of reformation of the violations and working with the industry working group. I would just want to call out the lawyers group that did extensive work for us here, and we didn't agree on everything for the rules with them, but we have a lot more to do there, and we made a lot of progress with them, and we have a lot more to agree on in this respect. So thank you. I want to personally thank Will Rasmussen for his personal leadership efforts in opening up the communications and making sure that we have good understanding between us and the industry for these rules and going forward into the future. And last, that these rules also make permanent our field testing standards for hemp, our work with ODA on hemp, to keep those products out of the hands of children and to make sure that people aren't illegally growing THC marijuana under the guise of the hemp program in this state. Tremendous amount of work here by industry, by staff, and more remains to get done. Like to just look at, and I would note that on the hemp issues through the task force in House Bill 3000, we'll continue to work with the legislature, with federal regulators and industry to help better clarify how the hemp market, CBD market, moves forward with greater accountability and greater market stability. But let's not kid ourselves, that's a marketplace that is going to be fraught with, I think, changing regulation as you look to the FDA getting involved in it, and as you look to the continued evolution of science that we have around these products in the marketplace today. The edible changes that we're looking at help balance the concerns of small and large producers to get into the marketplace as they can. Licensees will, work to digest the new rules and to start on this new even playing field of regulation, moving forward with the scoring of products to a serving size, the 10 milligrams that we're looking at. These rules require anything above the current potency limits to be scored, but we don't change things for existing products. If you want to go on, you don't have to change a thing for products, under 55 milligrams. So it provides some stability for those smaller businesses that may need additional time to move to the compliance with the new standards. I'd note that these are important because Oregon has a high rate compared to other states of poison center control calls related to THC overconsumption. Scoring does help with portion control and making sure that kids don't accidentally ingest significant amounts of THC. We won't have any single 100 milligram gummies on the market. The other note is that the scoring is very consistent with what other states that have legalized have done at 10 milligram serving size and 100 milligrams per package container. So we're aligning there that will help position Oregon with future federalization of cannabis commerce. A couple other things to put on the record. With respect to CBN, I want to be very clear to the industry and the work that we've done that the rule standards do allow for an independent gross determination without letter of or approval by FDA to move forward to us. Now, the rules do reserve to us the opportunity to review that determination and to consider any safeguards that we may want to put into place based on the data of that self-determination. This world of synthetics and intoxicating synthetics and non-intoxicating synthetics is a complicated one. I would hope that with those items that are not CBD or THC that are used in medicine, that companies do test the route of FDA approval for these items, as that is an available route, and we are going to continue to see more development of lifestyle cannabinoid usage in the market. And then there was discussion about whether a purity standard would be available for these products, or if we could establish such a standard. I would note that the staff's analysis is that there are a lot of difficulties with the impurities in a product and testing to move that forward. But irrespective of the problems that are identified with that, the OLCC is wide open to looking to the science, to looking at methodologies to move forward, and to work with the industry on any data developed around the potential of a purity standard that could be relied on to protect consumer interests. So with that, that concludes my comments on the rules. I want to really thank our staff here that did incredible work during this time period, and the commission and everyone for doing this, leading into this Happy New Year. And know that, this isn't ideal to do it at this time, and both the industry had to take time away and everyone to make sure that we could have as much understanding as possible and moving the commission towards enactment. There are things in these rules that we're going to want to refine in the future, but we need to have them ready for January 1 when the legislation goes into effect. May be instructive to us in the industry to ask the legislature for maybe a February implementation on future legislation when we have these major packages, so we don't have to do this again. But we did this to provide industry and everyone the greatest amount of time to work on and get that work done. So I appreciate everyone's efforts here. Following me will be Steve Crowley, and he'll do an extensive report around the rules and of edible. Rich Evans, violation.
Director Marks, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, before we go on to Steve Crowley, I want to ask if there any of the commissioners have any questions at this point.
Steve, Chair, I had one question. This is Commissioner Miletus. Steve, you mentioned the GRAS certification. That isn't, and that it's not an FDA. It's not under FDA. That's separate from FDA. If they are able to get that, we would reconsider some of these CBN issues that we've been having.
Yeah, they could actually qualify for their own safety determinations independently through that process. We would review the data, we'd look at it, but it's an independent evaluation. I know there was some concern that you had to do all of those things that are in our rules. You don't. You have to do the one thing. Get the self-determination is not quite the right word. They use contractors, they use scientists to evaluate that. But that would come forward to us, and we could move forward on that basis of a analysis provided under that process.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Steve, I have just one. Everything I've read, everything we're looking at, whether it's today when we vote on this or a year from today, the testing becomes incredibly important. And would you just remind us, either through ODA or what are we looking at in terms of funding to get additional testing done in the future?
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, considerable cost there, but I think we have a lot of that within our opportunity and our budget and the fees that industry provides us to move forward aggressively, substantially in the next budget cycle to look at all of the things we need to do to provide oversight to our existing lab licensee, to do market basket testing of products in the marketplace. We do very little of that except for on a complaint basis now, to really put in place the systems of accountability around labs, the testing in the field, how tests are conducted. I am excited about some of the technology out there to help us, some of the new systems and equipment that's coming into place that can, I think, help this industry take the next step forward for product consistency and safety in the marketplace. But we're going to have to make a substantial investment, Chairman, as well as our licensees will have to make substantial investments to make sure that we have the kind of consumer marketplace that, you know, customers and the public can rely upon.
So I just want to, for my own edification, I just want to understand, is it your opinion that we have adequate funding right now for the testing that we need to do over the next 2 years?
Mr.
I
Chairman,
understand OGA is, you know, I'm asking you just your opinion. Do we have enough funding?
Mr. Chairman, depending on how much we implement and how fast we do have, and how much we have to spend on enforcement of the illegal marketplace, that may present challenges through us. As you know, I have believed that we have had room in the past to move forward with our part of cost of oversight of this. And if not, I will certainly work with you and the industry on whether we need to increase our fees in the marketplace to make that happen. We do have low fees. I've talked to the industry about future need for this, but right now I am not at all certain that we will need that. We'll have to put together our proposal in our budget to see the amount of investment we'll make in 23-25. But, you know, in some respects, like, what do I say? I say it's our soft underbelly of our system today, right? Is we don't really, we're good at promulgating standards, but making sure those standards are complied with and acted in the marketplace are really a vital part of what we need to do to protect consumers in our marketplace. So,
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Executive Director. That thing is imprinted in my head now for the next 6 months. I'm going to remember that. Thank you.
okay.
Commissioner Revolve.
Commissioner, I can't see you, but just because the commissioner asked, we'll work with you on those budget implications for it and see what we really face as we look to create a package 23-25 OLCC budget.
Chair, this is
Commissioner-
Commissioner Revolve.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Director Marks, have we had an opportunity to take a look at the FDA rules are and their questions for the industry if they want to go independent? And I want to be assured that even if they go to the feds, FDA, that we still have the ability to say yes or no.
Well, Chairman, Commissioner Revolve, yes, so we do have the authority ourselves to set our own standard within the state currently. That would only change if legislation changed. We have had general discussions with the FDA, but we do understand the routes that are available with FDA. We know very little about how FDA is going to look at these things, except for what I said. For those products that aren't in medicine, there's an opportunity to review those cannabinoids, and we know that, to see and to ostensibly gain approvals of those products for use in items for human consumption. We know that's an available path. I would say that the FDA has been stellarly quiet in their regards to their, I think, responsibilities in the marketplace, particularly as it comes to keeping products out of the hands of children that are on the open market, and would like to see them. It would be helpful to states to see the federal government taking on its portion of responsibility in the open marketplace.
So that's why I bring this up, because I can see a path where the industry is saying that we should move forward. We as the state of Oregon should move forward simply because they have made the application to the FDA, and the FDA, as you put it, continues to be silent and slow. So as long as everyone understands that we're going to get pushback, because there are going to be people in the industry who will say, well, I've made an application to the FDA and you should go ahead and allow me to use the FDA, even though the FDA hasn't done anything.
Now, let me just make one, and Steve will go through this in his presentation, Steve Crowley, but let me make one comment here. CBD is used in medicine, THC as well. So that may be problematic without law changes on the federal side in terms of some of the primary purpose products in the marketplace, particularly CBDs themselves. But with respect to the cannabinoids that are non-intoxicating, different, that process where they're not used in medicine are available for approvals. In the state of Oregon, of course, it is legal to be able to sell CBDs in the marketplace.
I'm going to move on. It doesn't answer my question because I have concerns with the FDA, but I'll move on.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no other questions, I just do run a show a little bit. Steve Crowley will go through some of the justification for our standards for CBN, for edibles, for consumption and portion sizes, and for regulations, market limits. Rich Evans will talk a little bit more about the violations and our intentions in moving forward and the work that we have yet to do. In addition to the good work of the rules, you will take action. And then Anthony Giltoski will work with you formalization of reading these into the record and making it possible for you then to take your vote.
Very good. Steve, you're up.
Good morning, Chair Rosenbaum, Commissioners. My name is Stephen Crowley. I'm OLCC's Hemp and Processing Specialist, and I have a handful of slides to go through today. As you've heard, this rule package is substantial and covers a wide range of concepts. I will be going over some of the issues around cannabinoid concentration limits for hemp products and artificially derived cannabinoids and the reasoning behind these limits. And Laura, are those slides available? All right, and next slide, please. So this past
Steve, it seems like you might have muted.
Oops, sorry about that. So this past summer, the Oregon legislature passed House Bill 3000, which, among other things, directs OLCC to establish cannabinoid limits for hemp products for sales to minors and for sales to adults. These limits were found to be necessary largely due to gaps in federal regulation of hemp. Federal law theoretically allows for hemp products to contain THC in excess of the amounts allowed in state legal marijuana products. but it does also preserve FDA's authority to regulate those products. FDA regulations actually completely prohibit the inclusion of CBD and THC in foods and dietary supplements at present, but this prohibition is widely ignored by industry. Federal law also allows for the manufacture of hemp derivatives, which has resulted in a proliferation of semi-synthetic cannabinoids being introduced in foods, supplements, and other consumer products. These products are also subject to FDA's regulatory authority, but the manufacturers of these products have so far failed to clear these semi-synthetic cannabinoids through the regulatory processes established by FDA. OLCC staff have prepared a detailed analysis of these issues, and particularly the available science behind establishing non-intoxicating limits for THC in hemp products. This analysis has been provided to the commissioners and is available on the OLCC website. Next slide. So first, a little bit more on exactly why the federal limit of 0.3% is not an appropriate limit to apply to hemp products. Sometimes this number gets presented as a non-intoxicating threshold. That is not true. The 0.3% number is based on the cannabis plant or cannabis flower, not on supplements made from cannabis extracts. Many adult use marijuana edibles, which are sold explicitly for their intoxicating effects, contain less than 0.3% THC. This number is also sometimes presented as being similar to the limit for alcohol products, where anything below 0.5% alcohol by volume is considered non-alcoholic. This is also not a valid comparison because pound for pound, THC is nearly 3,000 times more potent than alcohol. If you have a beverage with 0.5% alcohol, you would need to consume about a gallon of that beverage to get 1 standard unit of alcohol, equivalent to a typical 12-ounce beer. If you have a beverage with 0.3% THC, you would need to consume about 1/3 of a teaspoon to get 1 standard unit of THC, equivalent to a 5 milligram serving in a marijuana edible. And you can see from this chart how ordinary foods and beverages with 0.3% THC can significantly exceed the limits on THC for adult use marijuana edibles. Next slide. In these rules, we have differentiated between sales to minors and sales to adults as directed by House Bill 3000. These concerns with these categories are similar but distinct. For minors, the key issue is that a minor should not be able to purchase products that contain an intoxicating quantity of THC. For adults who can legally purchase high THC products at an OLCC licensed marijuana retailer, the issue is more that a single serving of a hemp product should not be intoxicating, and that hemp products overall should have at least smaller quantities of THC than adult use marijuana products. One of the complicating factors is that full spectrum hemp products make up a significant portion of the market for hemp products. Full spectrum products contain CBD, THC, and other natural components of cannabis in roughly the same proportions that they occur in the plant. This presents a challenge because THC and CBD naturally occur in proportion to one another, typically in around a 1:20 ratio in hemp. So for every 20 milligrams of CBD in a full spectrum product, there will be about 1 milligram of THC. The more CBD there is, the more THC will also be present. So it's impossible to actually set a THC limit that prohibits the sale of intoxicating hemp products without also prohibiting the sale of full spectrum hemp products. Differentiating between sales to minors versus sales to adults allows us to prohibit the sale of intoxicants to minors without prohibiting full spectrum products for adults. Next slide. So immediately upon passage of House Bill 3000, OLCC established a limit of 0.5 milligrams THC per package as the maximum for sale to minors. This limit is very well supported by the available data. By comparison to alcohol, a 12 fluid ounce non-alcoholic beverage that can be sold to a minor can contain up to 1/10 of a standard unit of alcohol. 0.5 milligrams is 1/10 of a standard unit of THC. There are also several countries and organizations that have considered what dose of THC a person may be exposed to without risk of intoxication or adverse effects. This work has been motivated by the inclusion of hemp seed into foods, since the seeds may be contaminated with trace amounts of THC during processing. The majority of these analyses conclude that a limit around 0.5 milligrams THC per day is appropriate. Staff also considered whether a percentage limit on THC would be more appropriate, but determined that a milligram per container limit of 0.5 milligrams is actually less restrictive to industry for the majority of products. Internationally, THC limits in non-intoxicating hemp-based foods range from 0.002% at the high end to 0.0000005% at the low end, depending on the type of product. Next slide. For adults, sale to adults, we've landed on this table for per serving and per container limits. These limits would become operative on July 1 of next year in order to allow a 6-month sell down for any products that are currently on the shelves that exceed these limits. These numbers are larger than the limits in the rules draft that OLCC put out for public comment, and it represents something of a compromise with industry. We've increased the thresholds for edibles and tinctures from 10 milligrams per container and 50 milligrams per container, respectively, in the draft rules that went out for public comment, to 20 and 100 milligrams per container, respectively, in the rules before you today. Additionally, industry specifically requested that the per serving limit be increased from 1 milligram, as OLCC proposed, to 2 milligrams. And considering the available evidence, the rules before you today adopt that. The issue of what amount of THC is non-intoxicating in a single dose is complicated because there is a high degree of individual variation in how people respond to THC. This 2 milligram per serving limit is significantly higher than that 0.5 milligram thresholds that is the consensus number for safe non-intoxicating exposure, but also slightly below the level of 2.5 milligrams, which is generally considered to be a threshold dose for a typical adult consumer without tolerance to THC. At this level, some individuals, and especially sensitive individuals, may experience some effects from the consumption of THC. So it is important that an adult consuming this type of product knows how much THC they are consuming and how it might affect them. OLCC staff do have serious concerns about the lack of standardization and labeling requirements in the hemp market and the extent to which manufacturers may make it difficult for a consumer to know how many milligrams of THC they're consuming. The more difficult it is for a consumer to find that number, the greater the risk of inadvertent overconsumption of THC. If it becomes apparent that manufacturers of hemp products with significant amounts of THC are obscuring the amount of THC per serving from consumers, staff may recommend reducing this per serving limit in the future. Next slide. And the last major issue that I'd like to address is the limits on artificially derived cannabinoids, which are created synthetically from cannabis extracts. One of the major concerns here is the lack of appropriate regulatory oversight and the lack of industry compliance with federal regulations that are necessary to protect consumers of these products. There are concerns based on the manufacturing process about the potential for residual solvents and reagents, as well as unknown reaction byproducts with unknown health effects, which a consumer could be exposed to. Currently, the required compliance testing for cannabis products is not able to mitigate those risks. Staff have heard proposals that a purity threshold should be implemented, requiring the artificially derived cannabinoids be at least 97% pure. But knowing that a product is 97% pure is only reassuring to the extent that you know the other 3% is not harmful when consumed in that quantity, which requires knowing what that other 3% is. Additionally, cannabis testing labs in Oregon are not currently accredited to confidently report whether any given artificially derived cannabinoid exceeds 97% purity. The rules before you today would require non-intoxicating artificially derived cannabinoids to simply go through the ordinary regulatory channels and limit these artificially derived cannabinoids to the OLCC system where they're subject to tracking and labeling requirements. There would be a 6-month window for businesses to sell through existing products that don't comply with these requirements, and also recognizing the concerns that we've heard from industry. The rules would create an 18-month grace period for CBN products in the OLCC market to come into compliance with these requirements. Thank you for your time today, and I'd be happy to answer any further questions.
Any questions, commissioners? If there's none there, I just want to make a statement again, because you said it very clearly, Steve. There is a lack of quantifiable standards, and there will be an increase in criminal and civil penalties in some form or another. And when that happens, it's a perfect storm. You can't legislate the future, but you can be cognizant of the fact that there's going to be some very smart lawyers out there that are going to be playing games over the next 2, 3, 4 years. So the tighter we get this, the better off we are, as far as I'm concerned.
I have a question, Chair.
Commissioner?
Could or are there labels required to specifically state each ingredient? Like the 3%, would that be something that can be done or is done easily?
Chair Rosenbaum, Commissioner Chapong Porter, that is something that we could consider. The challenge with those impurities, though, is that they are generally unidentified. So listing the impurities as ingredients would be a challenge, simply because nobody, including the manufacturers, necessarily know what those impurities are.
That becomes counterproductive in many ways in what I said before.
Mr. Chairman, this is Steve Marks, Executive Director. Just to note, in the hemp market, right, we don't regulate the packaging and labeling there. California recently passed a law for packaging and labeling that could comport those standards more to the likes of our recreational marijuana standards for labeling and packaging and control. One of the issues we have in doing our job here is that, we don't clearly have that responsibility in the marketplace, and it is generally left to results provided by independent labs that are available to retailers to really make the distinction of what these products are. Now, we put out education materials to help them delineate what certificates of analysis would be allow products to be sold, but there is no doubt that we need better guidance for retailers and the protection of retailers on the packages that go into the open CBD hemp lower intoxicant THC marketplace, or non-intoxicating. Steve, help me out.
Well, staff has done a magnificent job on this. I honestly, I'm saying that it's a very difficult process, and I've been around the block many, many times. I absolutely see what's going to come down the pike over the next couple of years, and the tighter we do this, the better off. We've been very conscientious on this. It's not a self-serving statement. We've just done the very best job I think we can do on this. That's all I want to say on it.
Mr. Chairman, if I just might add, I do think this work we've done is amazingly good. I think it's nation-leading work. I think it's, determinative of standards around the ideas of intoxicants and non-intoxicants. I think this functionally gives the industry far more certainty and us certainty about moving forward. I think a lot of industry is going to look at these standards and not to suggest that they're perfect. They're imperfect. But of the work that's happened in the country. I think this is some of the best, most well-explained standard setting that's been put out there around these products. And this will obviously evolve, but I want to just compliment the staff and the industry that we worked with in being able to put these forward in our marketplace. I think this bodes well for greater, better regulation for consumers.
I think this is going to be a standard. There's no question about it. The point I'm trying to make is, and you made it too, that no matter how good this is, we're in for a ride over the next 2 years, period. Rich Evans, violations and compliance.
Chair, I think there's some questions from Commissioner Melides.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Yeah, the only thing, and this is just really brief, Stephen. You mentioned the sell down period, and that, you know, again, there's a lot of excellent work and a lot of information, and I think, you know, our choices, and as commissioners, it's pretty clear. The sell down period that we did work really hard to try to get for the you know, businesses that are going to be impacted by this. Can you go over that again? It's 18 months general market, 6 months, or 18 months regulated market, 6 months general. Is that correct?
Chair Rosenbaum, Commissioner Melides, yes, that's correct. There's a 6-month sell down for any existing products, both in the general market and in our market, that would be impacted by this rule change. And then for CBN products specifically, there's an 18-month grace period to come into compliance with the standards of either making a GRAS determination, which is establishing that there's evidence of a reasonable certainty of no harm, or getting the FDA to approve a new dietary ingredient notification, which the standard is a reasonable expectation of safety. But yeah, there's an 18-month period to meet that standard. And in the meantime, after that initial 6-month window, any CBN products would just need to comply with the labeling standards within our market, which is disclosing on the label that it contains an artificially derived cannabinoid and listing that as an ingredient. And that the CBN at minimum be manufactured in a facility with an ODA food safety license, and by either an ODA licensed hemp handler or an OLCC licensed processor.
Thank you. Yeah, and you really went into my second question too, because the 18 months, and I know there was a lot of discussion on the GRAS stuff and the FDA stuff. To my understanding, 18 months is a pretty big window that would allow them, if they were capable or so chose to get those certifications. That's essentially what you're saying, Stephen?
Yes, I think that's accurate. And I think it's also worth noting that the FDA requirements are that before you introduce a new dietary ingredient into a supplement and put that into interstate commerce, you're required to notify the FDA by submitting that new dietary ingredient notification. So the businesses that are selling these through interstate commerce, in theory, should have already begun that process. And the other objection that we have heard a lot is people saying that the FDA will not consider any cannabis ingredients. And I think it's really important to keep in mind the FDA's position is specific to THC and CBD. Because those are approved drugs, they read the regulations as prohibiting those from being dietary ingredients. That interpretation does not apply to CBN or any other cannabinoid that isn't an approved drug or under investigation as an investigatory new drug.
Thank you. Yeah, well, may not make everybody happy, but it's a pathway and it's something, and I think solves a lot of the issues. So thank you, Stephen. This was great.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, Steve Marks, Executive Director, I just want to pick up on, while in the general marketplace, we do have the quick sell down, 6-month sell down, we might have considered CBN being equivalent for our market to our adult use market, right, for adult use purposes in the general market, but there's no packaging, no labeling, no warning, and we don't have any real authorities other than standard setting in that marketplace. So it'd be very hard for us to actually assure accountability with any sell down, as it will be, because we don't have extensive authorities in that marketplace. So it would have been something that we could have considered more conscientiously on the commission and brought to the commissioners with greater accountability for a process, but we really couldn't devise that for the commissioner or the commissioners to seriously take a look at with the lack of control in the market today.
Very good. Okay, Rich, we're up for you.
Chair Rosenbaum, members of the commission, for the record, my name is Rich Evans. I'm the Senior Director of Licensing and Compliance for OLCC, and today I'm here to update you on the violation reclassification program and timeline. For the new commissioners that are here, this has been an ongoing internal project, bringing the industry and the OLCC folks together and trying to update the enforcement and compliance practices for OLCC as we move from an industry that came out of the shadows and the darkness into what we have now as a vibrant businesses that are thriving and going forward. The first thing that we did was in phase one was a verification of compliance program, and basically that was a way of settling low-level violations without any formal action that would result in violations coming before the commission. In April of 2021, we did some quick categorization fixes, bringing some glaring issues to light and fixing those in the short term. What you have in front of you today to vote on is the large-scale recategorization, which was completed, and most of it was completed as a result of Senate Bill 408, which requires certain violations to be cancelable, which is a Category 1 offense, and defining what is cancelable and what is not cancelable. And what we've done is made adjustments in the rules to reflect the intent of Senate Bill 408. And like I said, that is what you're voting on today. Just because we're at phase 3, we still have a lot of work to do. Phase 4 is in 2022, where we're going to look at the penalty schedule. There's been a lot of comments over the last year by industry and by the commissioners about penalties and realigning penalties with conduct. I think that since when the penalties were laid out in the very beginning of the program, it was all new. There were only a couple of states doing it, and I think there is an opportunity for us to adjust and realign with current practices. Besides that, internally, as you know, I've looked at the backlog of violations. I completed that work, and I will update you in the January meeting on where we're at on violations internally. But in the month of January, we'll be rolling out an internal policy for our inspectors to have more authority to warn on violations. In the beginning of the program, when it was established, all violations were forwarded to AHD. We're at a point now where we want our inspectors to work with licensees to gain voluntary compliance on minor issues instead of a formal process. And we will roll that out in policy. I'll report to you in the January meeting on the policy. We also have some work to do in AHD, the Administrative Hearings Division, on what violations we charge and how, what charges we bring forward to the commission in the future, and which can be resolved at a lower level or a informal level. I want to thank the industry work group. Director Marks spoke about the group led by Will Rasmussen. We've met many times. They've spent a lot of time providing documents for us and working hard to get where we're at today. Internally, Amanda Borup and Kelly Rout also worked very hard on this process. And in the near future, what you will see is some internal and external communications to the industry on what is new and where we're going. You will also see that a lot of the uncategorized, or a lot of our violations in rules and in statutes are not categorized, meaning that we will not have to have formal rulemaking to be able to change those or align those with current practices. And so that will be subject of additional meetings with the industry and formal notifications of the industry so that they know exactly what's going on within the OLCC. I will answer any questions you have at this time.
Commissioners?
Just to chair, it's Commissioner Miletus again. Director Evans, I know one of the issues was some concerns around intentionality, and we got some letters from some of the work group. Can you share, they had a few things they wanted to see that I know has been working hard on, and there were some concerns versus around the intentionality of it, where we weren't able to accomplish all of what they were hoping for, just because that seemed to be the sticking point there. Can you kind of discuss that a little bit?
Yes, Commissioner, Chair Rosenbaum, Commissioner Miletus, members of the commission. The question that Commissioner Miletus, is bringing up forward is they wanted to change the culpable mental state on a lot of the violations. Currently, we have a lower level requirement to prove that the violation occurred. Violations in Oregon generally have a preponderance of the evidence. Basically, if you run a stop sign, all they have to prove that you intentionally didn't run the stop sign, that you just actually did run the stop sign. We have a lot of similar rules in our culpable mental states in our statutes. The industry wanted to move to a intentional, basically a culpable mental state, meaning that the licensee had to intentionally or knowingly know that a violation was going to occur. And if you look at that on the face of something like a sales to a minor, where an employee sells to minors, the licensee would never know or intentionally do that. And if it was, it is a cancellation. And so we couldn't get to where they wanted to be on a lot of the mental states. That doesn't mean that we are not looking at further down the line, separating intentional conduct from permittees or licensees and charging them accordingly when the licensee had done a complete training program on something like an underage minor sale, where we start looking at different ways of moving on violations. But we didn't believe that having intentionally and knowingly, which are the standards for crimes like murder and other violations anywhere in our rule process. So I hope that answers your question, Commissioner Miletus.
Yeah, it does, because it's one of those things, and I think you hit a key point on the head. And we talked about a bunch, licensees versus permittees, frontline employees. It's definitely a change in the way things are done on the alcohol side. But I think and maybe probably Commissioner Floyd can speak to that better. But I think that yeah, it's definitely something we're looking at, and I think that would be helpful. And I just wanted to commend everybody, because this was 18 months of a lot of work, a lot of meetings, and I think that we get a lot of letters about the things people would like to see differently, but I think that it's important to remember how far everybody's come in this 18 months. So thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, before you go to Anthony, I think I need to put a couple more things on the record, maybe right here. Director Marks. So for the record, Steve Marks, Executive Director, OLCC. Thing the violations level, and I was reminded by Rich's discussion on hemp, the marijuana violations, that we do have the $10,000 penalty for violations of the hemp standard. Please, industry, we had a lot of discussion and concern by the commissioners that wasn't well delineated. It was the maximum charge that was provided by statute. Just remember that we will be settling minor violations of standards for lesser penalties. The legislature did believe 10,000 was appropriate to get after those that were really putting intoxicants into the open marketplace. And we think that's very necessary as well. As we go into the future and can refine this for industry. I know the commissioners are very interested in doing that. So I wanted to make sure that we had that on the record, because there was a lot of concern just about that being out there. And we did hear a lot in public testimony about that. I think industry saw that as we move forward, that we have been responsive on going to 18 months, on going to 2 milligram units on greater container size, that we did listen to the public and made significant changes to these rules. So just commend them to you, and want to reiterate before Anthony goes that we have come a very, very long way, and this industry has established success for Oregon here. You know, we went $1 billion in sales, the industry did, in November of this year, which was 10% faster than it did the year prior. We are creating a successful business market, a successful consumer market, and this is another big turn of progress for all the controversial rules and pieces that we had in place here. If you look at these rules, a lot of work has gone into negotiating those things to setting a stable framework into the future from the past. And 95% of this is all stuff that is very forward moving that we've agreed to, and we've got some new issues that have had some level of discussion and controversy and work, and we'll continue to do our work and work on them. So thank you.
Okay. Anthony, you're up.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, my name is Anthony Galtoski. I am a policy analyst with the OLCC. Chair, Commissioners, I am briefly going to read a little bit about the rule record before the motion is made on the rules. Staff is asking you to adopt the 2021 marijuana bill and technical package. And this is for December of 2021. The Oregon Legislature passed Senate Bills 408 and 96 and House Bills 3000 and 2519 at the 2021 legislative session. These bills have effective dates of January 1st, 2022, and required amendments to Chapter 845 Oregon Administrative Rules. The changes to these rules also include technical changes to address errors in the rules and update requirements to ensure continued viable operation of the regulated marijuana program. The changes in these rules are the result of legislation related to violation administration, adult use cannabinoids, artificially derived cannabinoids, and delivery requirements. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? If none, I think Commissioner Floyd, do you have a motion?
I've got a motion. Regarding the 2021 marijuana bill and technical package, I move to amend 845-025-0, or excuse me, let's take that back. 845-025-1015, 1330, 1335, 1440, 1450, 2020, 2040, 2500, 2550, 2700, 2705, 2750, 2755, 2760, 2785, 2800, 2880, 2900, 2910, 3210, 3215, 3255, 3310, 3500, 3505, 3600, 5045, 5500, 5700, 5730, 5760, 5790, 7000, 7020, 7030, 7160, 7190, 7500, 7520, 7540, 7570, 7580, 7700, 8520, and 8590, effective January 1, 2022, and to adopt 845-025-1310, 3320, 7145, 8550, 845-026-0100, 0200, 0210, 0220, 0300, 0400, 4100, 5700, 5760, 5770, 7000, 7010, 7030, 7040, 7060, and 7070, effective January 1st, 2022.
Commissioner Floyd, I think you just set a new record.
Oh my heavens.
Commissioner Hopper will be very jealous now.
I'm going to call him right after this. Yes.
All right, clerk will take the roll.
Commissioner Curran,
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Japone Porter,
Yes.
Commissioner Miletus,
Yes.
Commissioner Raval,
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. It's been a wonderful collective effort. It's very much appreciated. Have a healthy, happy new year and stay safe. Thank you.